Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack who lived with his mother in a cramped little cottage on a small farm. They didn't have much, only a cow and each other. Jack was a sweet boy who always tried his best, but he was a little forgetful and he didn't always make the most sensible choices. He let the chickens run away. He forgot to collect the harvest. He even crashed the cart. Like I say, he meant well. All they had left was the cow, and she no longer gave them enough milk, and so Jack's mother decided they must sell her. Jack's mother wanted to trust him to do a good job. She really did. So she let him go, telling him, "Don't take less than 5 silver pieces for her." Jack took the cow and set off for the market. He practiced what he would say in his head all the way. "I won't take less than 5. I won't take less than 5. He came across an old man sitting on a rock by the side of the road. He looked a bit grubby and a bit strange, but the man said, "That's a very nice cow. Are you selling her?" Jack blurted out, "I won't take less than 5. The old man said, "Done," and handed Jack a little jingling coin purse. Well, that was easy, Jack thought. He couldn't believe his luck, and off he skipped back down the road to the farm to tell his mother. "That was easy," she said as he came hurtling through the door. "I met a man on the road and he bought her straight away. I just said, 'I won't take less than 5, just like you told me, and he didn't even argue. He just gave me the coin purse and I ran off before he could change his mind. I did it, Mother!" "What do you mean he gave you the coin purse? Did you count the money, Jack? Did you even look inside?" Jack opened his mouth to answer, but no sound came out as he realised that no, he hadn't counted the money, and no, he hadn't looked inside. He watched as his mother pulled open the purse strings and tipped it upside down into her open palm. Jack's world came crashing down as he looked at what his mother held in her hand. Well, there were 5, so at least that was something. But not silver pieces. Not even coppers. No, not coins at all, but beans. 5 measly beans. He looked at his mother and she looked at him, and her disappointment just about broke his heart. She didn't say a word, just stomped out of the house, throwing the beans on the ground as she went. Jack just went right to bed without any supper, because there wasn't any. What would they do now? Tomorrow, he decided, he would leave the farm and he would not return until he found a good job so he could take care of them both. In the morning, he got up and had breakfast and tried to open the front door, but there, blocking the doorway, was a wall of green. He poked his head out of the window and found a beanstalk, but not just any beanstalk, it was huge. It was as thick as an oak tree, and its leaves were as big as wagon wheels. It grew up and up and up so high that it touched the clouds, and it just kept going. Jack wasn't very clever, but he was quite brave, so he started to climb. Along the way, he found beans, lovely green beans that were the sweetest, most delicious beans he had ever tasted, and they were enormous. Each one was as long as one of his legs. Up he went through the clouds until his head popped out above them, and what he saw took his breath away. A magical land above the clouds, where everything was as unnaturally large as the beanstalk. Flowers as big as trees as big as mountains, and a castle as big as, well, an even bigger mountain. Jack had never seen anything bigger than a mountain, so he had nothing to compare it to. Jack took a deep breath and snuck into the castle to explore. 2 things were clear about the person that lived there. They were very big and very rich. Piles of gold were everywhere, huge golden coins as big as Jack's face. Solid gold eggs lay scattered across the floor. Jack didn't waste any time. He picked up as much gold as he could carry, which was only 2 coins, and ran back to the beanstalk. This was enough gold to buy them a castle of their own. He stopped at the top of the beanstalk and dropped the coins down, knowing they would be waiting at the bottom when he climbed down. I wish I could say Jack stopped there, but, being Jack, he made a not very sensible choice, and he went back for more. Sneaking through the piles of gold, he heard beautiful music. And as he rounded a corner, he saw a beautiful golden harp playing the sweetest music he had ever heard, all by itself. Next to it was a hen. It looked ordinary enough, but as he watched, the hen laid a solid gold egg and then just got up and wandered off as if that was a totally normal thing to do. Jack stepped closer, but as he did, a deafening voice boomed through the castle.
Fee, fi, fo, fum, the thief in my castle had better run.
Jack grabbed the hen under one arm and the harp under the other and ran. The voice continued.
Fum, fo, fi, fee, there's no other giant as scary as me.
As he neared the beanstalk, the huge castle doors crashed open and the giantest giant appeared and started to chase Jack, his thunderous footsteps shaking the ground. Jack jumped for the beanstalk and slid down it, still with the hen and the harp tucked under his arms. He slid all the way down, and as he neared the bottom, he could see his mother waiting there for him, shock all over her face. "Mother, get the axe, quick!" he shouted. He leaped the last few feet and started hacking at the beanstalk with the axe. He could see the giant's feet and then legs descending through the clouds.
Wait!
Shouted the giant. Jack looked up in surprise.
Don't chop down the beanstalk, you'll kill me!
Jack didn't know what to say. That was sort of the point.
I just want my chicken back. You stole her.
The giant sounded sad.
She's my chicken.
Jack looked at the chicken, and she seemed sad too.
Just give me the chicken and I'll go home. No questions asked. Then you can chop down the beanstalk.
Jack thought for a moment. "Okay," he said. The giant's hand came down and carefully picked up the chicken. The chicken squawked at Jack, and Jack reluctantly handed over the harp too. The giant went back up the beanstalk, and when Jack was sure he was safely back at the top, he chopped the great beanstalk down. Jack and his mother harvested all the incredible beans and sold them at the market, and people came from far and wide to buy them. Oh, and in case you were wondering about those giant golden coins that Jack threw down, don't worry, they found them. And do you know what his mother said? "You really are a clever boy, Jack." The Lion and the Mouse. Once upon a time, there was a tiny little mouse. He lived with his Mama Mouse and Papa Mouse and his 500 mouse brothers and sisters in a big nest made out of grass and sticks. With that many brothers and sisters, it was hard for the mouse to stand out or make his parents proud of him. He dreamed of being special, or maybe even famous, but he found there was nothing he was really very good at. One of his sisters was an amazing singer, and one of his brothers could do all of his times tables, even 7. He had another brother who could do a backflip, and another sister who painted the most beautiful finger paintings. He couldn't do any of those things. He couldn't cook, he didn't know how to build nests or invent things, he wasn't good at telling jokes or doing magic tricks. He tried everything, but was disappointed time and time again. On a particularly bad day, after the mouse was finished trying to find out if he could hold his breath underwater the longest, he decided it was time to take a break. Once he had finished coughing up water, he decided to go for a walk. "I've had enough," he said to himself. "I'll never be good at anything, and no one will ever notice me." Dripping wet and a bit embarrassed, he trudged off, away from the nest and his family. He walked through the grass and past the watering hole where the giraffes, zebras and hippos were cooling off in the midday sun. They didn't notice him either. The mouse kept going, feeling absolutely miserable. He wasn't sure where he was going, but he needed some space, away from his back-flipping, times-tabling mouse brothers and sisters. He walked across the dry, dusty ground towards an acacia tree, and looking high up at the branches, he decided to climb. For a moment, he thought perhaps this could be his talent. He could climb really well. But then he remembered that that's just a mouse thing, and it didn't make him special at all. Still, he wasn't sure what else to do, so up he went. He reached one of the top branches and stopped to rest. Just then, a huge lion with a massive fluffy mane came ambling over. The lion flopped onto the ground, sending a cloud of dust up into the air. The mouse froze. What was he going to do now? He'd have to wait until the lion left again, but it was hot, and the lion's belly looked round and full. He would be there for hours. The lion started snoring, and the mouse tried to get comfy for a long stay. Suddenly, a great big wasp came and buzzed around the mouse's head. The mouse tried to swat it away, but the wasp just kept coming back, buzzing around his head again and again. "Buzz off," the mouse whispered, careful not to wake the lion. With all of the swatting and swinging, the mouse lost his balance, and before he could stop himself, he went toppling off the branch. Down, down, down he went, and landed in a tangled heap right on top of the lion's mane. The mouse was terrified. He didn't dare move a muscle. He waited for the lion to wake up, but by some miracle, the lion stayed asleep. Slowly, carefully, the mouse freed himself from the thick mane and crept down the lion's shoulder, over his paw, and back down to the dirt. He took one last look at the lion to check he was still asleep, and finding that he was, the mouse started home, breathing a huge sigh of relief. Little did he know that the puff of air that he released vibrated one of the lion's long, wiry whiskers, and the lion opened one eye. Suddenly, the lion's huge paw came down on the mouse's head, and he was trapped. It was dark and scary under the lion's paw, and the mouse trembled. Said the lion, licking his lips. "A tasty little afternoon snack. I do love a juicy little mouse." "No, don't eat me," squeaked the mouse. "I'll do anything." The lion thought about it for a moment. "Like what?" he asked. "Can you do a magic trick?" The mouse could not believe it. He couldn't do a magic trick to save his life, and he'd made peace with that, except now it might actually save his life. He suddenly felt very sad about it again. "I can't do anything special," the mouse said sadly. "I don't have any talents. I'm not particularly clever or handsome. But I promise that if I can ever repay you, I will. If you ever need help, I will be there." The lion paused for a moment, and then he threw his head back and laughed, a roaring, whole-body-shaking laugh. He slowly lifted his paw and came nose to nose with the mouse. "I'm not sure how you'll ever be able to do anything to repay me, tiny little mouse. But you have made me laugh harder than I've laughed in a good long while, so I will let you go." The mouse didn't look back. He ran and ran all the way home, climbed into bed, and got straight under his covers. He was the luckiest mouse alive. Maybe that was his talent. In the next few days, the mouse told his brothers and sisters what had happened with the lion, but none of them believed him. No one had ever spoken to a lion and lived to tell the tale before. How typical that the only impressive thing the mouse had ever done was so fantastic that no one thought it could possibly be true. After a while, the mouse stopped bothering to tell anyone, and soon even he started to wonder whether it had really happened, or whether he'd dreamt the whole thing. He gave up on trying to be special too, and instead started dressing up as a superhero at mouse kids' birthday parties. One day, when the mouse was just finishing his hero act at his niece's 6th birthday party, he heard a deafening roar, thundering across the plains. Suddenly, his promise to the lion echoed through his head, and he lurched into action. With his cape flying out behind him, he ran towards the sound as fast as his legs could carry him. All the animals at the watering hole were running too, but they ran the other way, away from the terrifying sound. The roars got louder as he got closer, and he realised the sound was one of terrified panic, not of rage. Finally, he came to the acacia tree, and underneath it he found the lion, caught in a poacher's net. He looked tired, and he was tangled up so tightly that the ropes were digging into his fur. The mouse leapt onto the lion's shoulder and got close to his ear. "I'm here," he said, with his chest bravely puffed out.
"Mouse, is that you?" the lion said weakly. "Are you dressed up as a superhero?"
"Doesn't matter," the mouse said. "I'm going to rescue you." And the mouse jumped down and started gnawing on the ropes that held the lion. He gnawed and chewed and munched and chomped until the ropes pinged loose and the lion sprang free.
"Little mouse," the lion said, "you have saved me. How can I ever thank you?"
"We're even now," the mouse replied. "My debt is repaid."
"Are you absolutely sure there's nothing I can do?" the lion said.
"Well," said the mouse, "there is one thing." And so, that is how the mouse came to be delivered back to his mouse brothers and mouse sisters, and Mama Mouse and Papa Mouse, riding high on top of a lion's mane, dressed as a superhero. The lion told the mouse family about his mouse friend's actions.
"And he is the bravest, most daring mouse I have ever met."
The mouse felt amazing. Finally, his family were proud of him. But more importantly, he felt proud of himself, because he knew that he had done the right thing when no one else could. And that made him the most special mouse of all. The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a grand kingdom. She was a little bit spoiled and a little bit selfish, and she would spend all day playing in the gardens with her fancy toys instead of learning about the running of the kingdom like she should. Her father, the king, was just and kind and loved by all of his subjects. He was starting to worry that when the time came for his daughter to become queen, she would be a bit, well, rubbish, and she would undo all of his hard work, making the kingdom so brilliant. But what could he do? One day, the princess was playing as usual in the gardens with a new golden ball. She would throw it in the air and catch it, and then throw it and catch it and throw it and catch it again. It wasn't a very exciting game, but she spent a lot of time on her own, so she didn't mind. She threw the ball higher and higher, catching it every time, until one throw was just a little too high, and the ball slipped through her hands when she tried to catch it, and it came tumbling down onto the grass and then bounced away down a slope. "No!" she shouted as the ball bounced right into the pond with a neat little splosh. She flopped down by the pond crossly. "What will I do now? I'll be in such trouble. This is the 9th golden ball I've lost this month." A loud ribbit from just beside her nearly made her jump out of her skin. "Goodness!" she exclaimed. "What on earth was that?" "It was me," a little voice said. The princess looked all around until she saw a slimy little creature with long jumpy legs and 2 big googly eyes sitting atop a lily pad. "Ugh!" she shrieked. "A disgusting little toad!" "Actually, I'm a frog," said the frog, thoroughly offended. "I was going to help you find your golden ball, and all I would ask in return is that you let me stay with you in the palace for a while. 3 days to be exact." The princess recoiled and said, "No way! You are slimy and yucky, and I don't want to touch you, let alone take you home with me." "Ah, well," said the frog, "never mind," and he hopped into the pond with a plop. "Wait!" called the princess, realising she would never get her golden ball back without him. The frog's eyes appeared just above the waterline, narrowed on her, waiting for what she had to say. "Fine," she sighed. 3 days and no more." "Deal," the frog said, and he disappeared under the water once more. In 1 second flat, her golden ball came flying out of the water towards her, and she caught it in one hand. And then that naughty princess turned and ran back up to the palace as fast as she could go. She never had any intention of taking the frog home at all. Out of breath and a little muddy, the princess slammed her bedroom door behind her and leant back on it, relieved. Thank goodness she didn't have to spend another second with that disgusting little amphibian. Suddenly, there was a booming knock on her door, and she nervously opened it. Standing in the doorway was her father, the king, with a thunderous look on his face. Sitting on his upturned palm was the frog, with an equally furious look on his face. "This frog tells me you broke a promise, daughter," the king said, with a deep frown.
That is not behaviour befitting of a princess. In this kingdom, we keep our promises. Fulfill your promise properly, or I will make it a week." The princess looked at the frog with a scathing look. What a snitch! The frog gave her a smug smile. He had won this one, and he knew it. The king held out the frog and raised an eyebrow at the princess. She held out her palm, and the frog hopped wetly onto it. Splat! The princess nearly gagged, but with one look from the king, she quickly composed herself. And so the frog would stay. She made him a soft little bed out of a velvet cushion and a silk scarf and placed it on her nightstand. She made a little bath for him out of a silver jewellery box, and she gave him a solid gold saucer to eat from and a jewel-encrusted egg cup to drink. She was going to do this properly because there was no way this frog would be staying more than 3 days. Not 1 minute more. She carried him in her pocket and showed him all around the palace. The magnificent throne room, the majestic ballroom, the royal gallery, all the most impressive parts of her home. "What about the rest?" the frog asked. "The rest?" the princess repeated. "The rest? I've shown you all the most amazing parts of the palace. What more do you want?" "The rest," he shrugged. Finally, the princess understood. She showed him to the kitchens where the flour-covered cooks worked tirelessly to feed everyone, the stables and kennels where the stable boys cared for the horses and dogs. She introduced him to the maids, the butlers, the housekeepers, and the chimney sweeps. She even showed him outside the palace and took him to meet some of their royal subjects in the city outside. It turned out the frog was actually quite good company. He loved meeting everyone and chatted away to them all happily. He was kind and funny, and she started to watch him carefully and think about how maybe, just maybe, she could try to be a little more like him. At the end of the 3rd day, the frog thanked the princess and got ready to go back to the pond, a sad, faraway look in his eye. "I'll miss you," the princess told him nervously. "I've learned so much from you. You're so much better at all this than me. You'd make a much better ruler than I ever will. I wish you could stay." The frog beamed at this. "Thank you, princess," he said, and then he began to glow and glisten. "What is happening?" the princess said, stepping back in shock. "Long ago, I was cursed by a wicked witch," the frog said, as he started to float up into the air, surrounded by magic. "I was selfish and spoiled, and I demanded respect from people purely because of who I was. I didn't earn it." "Who you were," she repeated. "The spell could only be broken when someone accepted me and respected me for who I am inside, regardless of who I used to be." "Who were you?" the princess asked. Finally, the blinding glow around the frog faded, and there before her was a handsome young man with a crown upon his head. "A prince," he said, smiling nervously at her. The princess couldn't believe her eyes. She took the prince straight away to see the king and tell him everything. The king was so pleased at the change in the princess and could see that it was all thanks to the prince. He decided that, if they wanted to, they could marry, and they did. The prince and princess became king and queen, and they ruled the kingdom, adored by all the royal subjects, and they lived very happily ever after. The Ugly Duckling. There was once a mother duck. She had laid a little pile of perfect blue-green eggs in her nest, and she sat on them, patiently, lovingly, for exactly 28 days, checking them and turning them just right so they would all hatch into perfect, healthy ducklings. After exactly the right amount of time, the eggs started to shake and wobble, and slowly they began to crack. First, smooth, dainty little beaks appeared, and then cute little yellow faces. And finally, fluffy little bodies emerged from the eggshells, and the tiny little baby ducklings started cheeping adorably at their mother. But there was one egg left. It was bigger than the rest, with a dull grey colour. While the cute little ducklings all shook their little tails and started getting to know each other, the last egg just lay there. It didn't move. The mother duck was very sad. Even though she knew that not all eggs hatch,
She felt sure she'd done everything right for her eggs, and she couldn't understand why this one was taking so long. But she was a good mother, and she carried on warming the egg and turning it carefully with her beak, until finally, after 8 more days, the egg finally wobbled and cracked. The crack revealed a long black beak, a dull grey face, and a clumsy and awkward body. The ugly duckling tried to cheep cutely at its mother, but only an unpleasant hissing honk came out, and all its fluffy yellow brothers and sisters laughed. The mother duck shushed the naughty ducklings and told them not to be unkind. She nuzzled her new baby and kept him tightly under her wing to keep him warm and safe and show him that he was loved and wanted. He quickly became stronger and bigger than all of his siblings, even though they were older than him. After a few days, he was ready to swim with his mother and leaped into the pond with great enthusiasm and excitement. The water felt wonderfully cool on his scrawny black legs, and he dived and splashed to his heart's content. His brothers and sisters watched from the pond's edge. They didn't feel ready to swim just yet, and they became even more hateful of the ugly duckling. They didn't like how closely their mother kept him, and now they didn't like that he was showing them up with his swimming skills either. They decided he would have to go. So one evening, while the mother duck was out finding some juicy slugs for their dinner, they crowded round the ugly duckling and pushed him cruelly out of the nest. "We don't want you here. You don't belong with us," they said. The ugly duckling was heartbroken, but he knew deep down that he was different somehow. So he left the nest, the pond, and his beloved mother duck, and went out to find his own way in the world. He padded his way across the moonlit farm to a river, where he slid into the gentle current and drifted away. After a short while, the ugly duckling felt something cold and slippery touch his webbed foot. He felt suddenly very small and very alone on the river. It touched him again, and he started to paddle faster, and then he felt something very sharp clamp down on his foot. He screamed and flapped his stubby little wings and kicked his feet to get away. He shook the thing off and made it to the riverbank to see the pike dive back down under the black water, its sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. The ugly duckling wondered if perhaps the river wasn't the safest place for such a little thing. He waddled along down the riverbank a little further. From the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of orange and heard the gnashing of jaws, and suddenly a fox was upon him, trying to gobble him up. He leapt back into the river, thinking to take his chances with the pike again, and the fox slunk away. The rest of the night was spent between the river and the bank, avoiding rats, otters, and even an enormous owl who swooped down to try and snatch him up in her claws. When the sun finally came up, the ugly duckling was exhausted. As he paddled down the river, he saw a little cottage with a neat little vegetable garden and a rickety wooden shed. The door was slightly open, and so he quickly went inside. It was warm and safe in the shed, and the garden was full of delicious, juicy slugs. The ugly duckling made himself a shaggy little nest out of bits and bobs he found in the shed, and decided to stay a while. The little old lady from the cottage found him there, but instead of shooing him away, she laid a handful of fresh peas from her garden by his nest and let him be. She was glad of the help with the slugs, and he was no bother, even if he was rather unsightly. The ugly duckling stayed there in the shed all winter, occasionally taking quick dips in the river to wash, but never stayed in the water long enough to really enjoy himself, for fear of the riverbank creatures who might have him for lunch. As spring started to brighten the garden, the ugly duckling found that his little nest had become rather too small, and he was finding it very difficult to squeeze through the gap in the doorway of the shed. The little old lady could tell it was time for him to go. She gave him one last handful of peas and stroked his head and waved him off as he stepped into the river. He didn't want to go, but something in his heart told him he had to move on. He paddled down the river bravely and was surprised that the other creatures on the riverbank seemed to give him a wide berth. He came to a lovely wide part of the river, where the water was calm and still, and there before him he could see what seemed like 1,000 beautiful white birds with long, elegant necks and huge, graceful wings. They filled the water and the sky like snowy confetti, and he'd never seen anything so wonderful. Worried that they would laugh at his ugly appearance, the ugly duckling kept his head low and paddled on, eager to get through without being mocked and teased, but desperate to stay longer to watch the lovely birds. He noticed that as he swam through the birds, they seemed to be stopping to look at him and turned to track his progress down the river. He paddled harder, worried that the jeers and laughter would soon start, but instead he could swear that one dipped its head in a gesture of respect. The ugly duckling lifted his head and couldn't believe it when the birds met his eye and smiled. Not a pitying or sympathetic smile, but hopeful and friendly smiles. Why weren't they laughing at him? He slowed his paddling and let the ripples of water go still around him. The current of the river was so slow and still there, it was like glass. The ugly duckling looked down at his reflection and froze. Gone was his long black beak. Gone was his dull grey face, and gone was his clumsy, awkward body. In its place was a smooth white body, powerful white wings, and a slender curving white neck leading to a handsome black and orange beak. The ugly duckling smiled. He had grown into the most magnificent swan. The end. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this magical story. If you want to come along on more of our adventures, make sure you subscribe to our channel. There's so much more to be discovered. You can start right now by clicking on our channel and picking your next favourite tale. There really is something for everyone, from daring heroes and mischievous creatures to magical lands and secret wonders. And remember, by subscribing, you'll be the first to know when a brand new story is ready to be enjoyed. Let's go.